what an evening so far. And now we have the feature of the evening, a highly regarded voice, a person of soul, wisdom, and wit. So, Al, let me get my little write up here. L is a transgender poet, U.S. Army veteran, and professional dungeon master whose work explores themes of identity, imagination, and resilience. Their storytelling blends lived experience with fantasy, drawing from years of military service and a deep love of collaborative role playing games. As a professional dungeon master, Eleanor crafts immersive narratives that challenge and delight players across multiple campaigns. She's excited to join the MFA class of 2027 at the University of San Francisco, my alma mater, with a genre focus on fiction. Her poetry has been featured in readings and workshops that celebrate trans voices and the power of speculative storytelling. And I have a link in the write up to Linktree, and there's information there. That'll also be in the write up here. I just want to say I was impressed with the voice, the clarity, the specificity, the detailing, and the elaboration. A wonderful voice, a wonderful voice. I'm so glad you are here.
Thank you so much, Dan, for inviting me and welcoming me into this space. And I do need to shout out all the friends and family that have shown up. Thank you so much. And I'm very excited to jump into this bit of what I have been reflecting on and has been churning in my brain. I have a few poems and a snippet of a story to share with you over the next 20 minutes. I'm just going to jump right in. This is a poem that I shared when I actually met Dan a few months ago. It was going to be spoken, it was going to be read later. However, with the news yesterday from the Supreme Court that myself and thousands of other transgender service members could face expulsion from the military before our case is even heard, came through, I said, this is going right back to the front. This poem is called I Am Both Sides. Policy. It is the policy of the United States government to establish high standards for troop readiness, lethality, cohesion, honesty, uniformity, and integrity. I am the soldier of the year, a silent face in the woodline, meeting your eyes, affirming with a nod through fogged lenses. I am connected to you through a dial tone, dropping everything to hold you by the bridge, in the blinding white of waiting rooms 2:30, guided by the wail of the sickly ambulance delivering us one more sunrise. I am get that fucking gun up. I am the soldier of the year, the heart of the fight through the swamps and mountains and sand. You stood with me, mentored me, followed me. Policy. Expressing a false gender identity divergent from an individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. It is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required of a service member and conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. I am another mandatory training. The it which slides with glee from your mouth as you recount meeting someone like me. I am sitting across the damp cardboard that separates our books from the mud we've made our home, sharing cigarettes and M&Ms and laughter, until I am pulled from the present, not by words to me, not for me, but nevertheless astray through the mess of spades and smoke. I am, what a fucking faggot. I'm another mandatory training, a scapegoat, a spit of disgust, a threat of violence you veil as a joke. And yet, I stood with you, followed you, led you. This next is a new poem about a man whose name I cannot remember. I met him in Peru, and he lives rent-free in my head for the last few years. It's called He Cheered for Me. I was alone, or nearly alone, a foreigner among men who laughed easily, lived close to the ground, close to the sky, surrounded by a heat that fills your lungs. A second breath, something heavy you have to carry. We spent the morning carving lines into sand, boards strapped to our feet, falling more than flying. By the roadside, we shared pork rind sandwiches in thin paper wraps, the fat still warm, bread soft with grease. The world smelled like earth and brine and fire. Nothing important seemed hidden. Then he saw the photo. Me and my old squad, grinning wide at the end of a brutal exercise, weapons hoisted high like trophies, faces streaked with dirt, boots soaked from endless rainy wilderness. We were filthy, we were free, young, in the way only the exhausted and unbroken can be. He pointed at the picture, laughed, and asked, "Did you go to war?" It was the kind of question I learned to answer with a shrug, to live with the aftertaste of it. I said no, and braced for the familiar slipping away. The nod, the blank look, the small, invisible accounting of worth. But he didn't nod. He didn't step back. He threw his fist in the air, bright, sudden joy bursting out of him like a victory song. "Good!" he cried, "good!" And for a moment, the sand, the heat, the whole world tilted sideways, and I let myself believe him. I've lived under a different sky, a sky that weighs everyone by how closely one has stood to death, a sky that teaches you to carry the shame of surviving untouched. And it's a strange thing to be disappointed by your own survival, to wonder if you're hollow because you have no scars. But here, with sand in my socks, grease on my fingertips, this man who knew nothing of me beyond a photograph and a broken language cheered for the fact that I had not been broken. As if that was a thing worth honoring. As if mercy was a kind of valor too. I think about that often, about the burn of the sun on my neck, the pepper sting on my tongue, and that smell of pork fat and earth and salt. About my own smile, young, filthy, free, captured before long years of waiting and wondering. About how maybe the measure of oneself is not how ready they are to die, but how stubbornly one holds on to life. I still don't know how to carry it, but I remember his fist in the air. I remember his laughter, the sandwich, the sand, and the way the world cracked open just for a moment and showed me something merciful. This poem is called You Were Right. All those years ago, before the gray little elephant disappeared from your pillow, before you shared your first kiss, before you boarded that eastbound plane shining red and silver, all those cold nights when you woke up in his bed, still dreaming of a day that never came, when the glass shattered above your head, lobbed from a woman you scorned, when the dancing turned to spinning, turned to falling, turned to an ambulance ferrying you downtown. All those autumn suns, where she wrote her number down on your arm, where you caught the kitten behind the barn up north, where you stood in the desert and wept as she was crowned with whites and pinks and reds and greens, walking down the aisle to take your hand. Your entire life spent screaming words never meant to meet any ears. Your entire life speaking a truth under covers, behind screen names, slipped from your lips when one glass became too many. Never heard, believed, understood. In my dreams, we walk hand in hand. I introduce you to my world, my house, my wife. I show you my family. Before I wake, I hold you tight. All that I have, all that I have shared, it's yours, I say. It's all yours. I wake up and you are no longer in my arms, yet I know you're near. I have to tell you, you were right. This is a selection from a short story that we're going to fit alongside these poems. It's from a story that I got to workshop at CCSF while working on my grad school applications, which now I'll be joining USF in the fall, their MFA program. It's called A Bed of Rockets. I couldn't place what it was. I felt relaxed, surrounded by the familiar and the unacquainted. When Todd first briefed the designs for his camp, I asked and laughed if we'd also have churros and room for Space Mountain. He smiled politely, but continued his briefing. I had proven myself competent, which earned me grace, but I was still the newest member of the team, and didn't receive the laughs I thought I would. I'd come to see that our camp was less Disneyland and more the Stations of the Cross. The water reserve, nearly 1,000 gallons, tucked between moss-covered oak trees, sat on a trailer with an elephant's trunk for a hose. 15 paces away sat the field rations. In theory, a convoy could drive through the middle and refit food and water at the same time. At the southern end of camp was the ammo cache. Metal racks dropped in the mud by passing armored 18-wheelers. Every 3 days, a new rack was delivered. Bullets, flares, smoke grenades, mortars, mines, we had it all, though never seemingly the right size or quantity needed by the boys on the front. To the furthest north point were the fuelers, easily the most visited station. The fumes lingered in deep, muddy ruts, cut by the never-ending line of passing vehicles. The fuelers held to a strict work-rest cycle, which became the envy of the other soldiers. Soldiers who only saw the sleeping and games of spades. I saw the plastic bags stuffed into the fuelers' boots, attempting to save their socks from the pale brown waters that pooled deeper and deeper after each passing truck. Between the fumes and the risk of trench foot, I let the fuelers stick to whatever rest plan they wanted. A safe distance between the fuel trucks and the ammo pallets were our ambulances and the aid station. The two always alternated the east or west border of the camp. We learned early on to keep the ammo, fuel, and casualties separate. They never mix well. Looking out across our camp, I can see the faint blue light of Todd checking the overlays on his computer for the third time. One of the soldiers manned my radio. I left my notebook in the truck and couldn't tell you who was on watch this hour. 2 infantry squads fanned out around us, providing security. Their section leader was a small woman with dark hair. She was from Guam and not actually infantry qualified. That didn't matter, but I thought it was funny nonetheless. Her soldiers dug fighting positions and placed obstacles and drew range cards and sector sketches. They were professional, deadly, and enthusiastic. I'd left them in the rain only 2 days earlier. Guard this cache of food, man your radio, don't let anyone near you without the challenge or password. She relayed the message to her soldiers, and they took the order like a James Bond mission. They waited over 30 hours, but the pickup team never arrived. Aggravated and without orders, I sent a truck to scoop them up and the food. If someone left me in the rain for a day and a half for no reason to guard food no one was coming for, I'd be upset, I guess. They weren't, and now they're back with us and digging holes. I wasn't alone on the rockets. I don't remember whose idea it was in the first place, but Sarah threw herself atop the lot as quickly as I did. Having company was the only physically comfortable part of tonight's bed of choice. After a series of scoots and wiggles, we deemed the stack safe enough, and Sarah and I laid down atop the rockets. The night air was humid and warm, but it wasn't raining. I didn't need the excuse to air my feet out. I'd been religiously drying out my socks with my truck's AC, but we quickly removed our boots and socks. The night continued without stars. Thick clouds, taunting us with the storms contained within, formed a low ceiling. This was one of the darkest nights, to be sure. We watched as each hour the guard shift changed. Whoever was on my radio woke up their replacement, and then they did the same an hour later, and they did the same too. Todd's computer never turned off. I could see through his windshield. He'd rub his eyes, look down at a notebook in his lap, and then pick up the tethered stylus and begin tapping away at the screen mounted to the passenger seat. We wanted to invite him to the rockets, but neither of us wanted to put our boots back on. I know now what made that night different from the rest. After the second changing of the guard, we took our body armor off. That 30-pound bear hug around my shoulders and chest released. My helmet had been off for hours, but now, with my kit and belt and rifle sprawled out on the bed of rockets with it, every night before this had been accounted for by the minute, and every night that followed blurred into the next. I'm gonna end with a poem I forgot about. I jotted down a bunch of thoughts after the election, and then a few months later I remembered about it and I hobbled it together, and a few months later then I forgot about it, and a few months later I remembered it again. So it's a series of reflections that have kind of been cooked over and over on top of each other. I want to believe I can accept my joy as it arrives, and that others will too. The thought is present in my mind, however, that perhaps we will never extend our joy like the sorrow which blankets us now. I dislike using that word, never. Final, terminal, ultimate. What does it mean to celebrate the self when others suffer? If there's reason to weep from both heartache and joy, does it matter for which you weep? To choose joy, am I neglecting the pain of others? To choose joy, am I withdrawing from our pact of solidarity? So much of our anger and hurt and fear and tears and cries seem to be shared across my feed. If I find a reason to laugh, will others join me? And if I tell joy that I'm preoccupied with loss and hurt and despair and sorrow, with hospital tents set ablaze by screaming jets, with the drone that meets a muddy soldier's final scramble across a winter field, with lies from a made-for-TV zealot's lips dripped across a family's dinner table, with a child taken from this earth by a faceless badge? Will joy wait for me? This pact of solidarity I acknowledge, I understand, but do I belong? Belonging is something I've come to know naturally and yet unnaturally. Simply being born white enough, born rich enough, born red, white, blue enough, I found belonging. Belonging not where I belong, an uncomfortable inhabitation which became my normal. Inside this body and where I walk, on the outside accepted, no one acknowledging my lies. Comfort comes from blending in. Uncomfortable inhabitation, a persistent itch, an ache beneath my muscles. No stretch, no scratch, no cure will bring relief because I know I am a fraud. And everything I was born into will be torn down if I scratch, if I stretch. But I see others, so many, each in their groups and each in themselves, leaving an uncomfortable comfort. It doesn't make me comfortable, not at first. And even with years and smiles and embraces and pride and knives and needles, the itch, the ache invades my mind. You don't belong here. You're not one of us. You're not enough. Words unspoken, but real nonetheless when I close my eyes. I'll get over them one day, standing with those around me, chosen with interest and care and proximity and warmth and intent. I stand in solidarity and acknowledgement and understanding. I stand in belonging and I feel. And so I want to believe that my joy can be shared, if not in celebration, then in a smile, in a laugh, in a distraction, relieving the weight my community carries. And if that's true, it is imperative that we accept then whatever joy arrives, great or small, each of us, each day, another celebration, a torch, hand in hand, guiding one another through the darkness. And that's my
Right at 20 minutes.
Unmute, ladies and gentlemen. Let him hear. Let Al hear.
That was incredible, Elle. You're so talented.
Yeah, that was great, man.
Thank you, everyone.
Bravo,
Thank you.
bravo, bravo.
Wow.
Brought me to tears.
Intense and beautiful. So well done.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me share. And again, Dan, thank you for inviting me. And everyone else, thank you for coming and listening.
It says